Daisy has been noticing a stray Labrador wandering around the park for 5 days straight on her way home. On the 6th day, she decided to take the dog home and adopt it. She brought some toys and food with her to lure the dog, but as she was petting it, she felt something strange around its neck. Daisy was shocked. Did the dog have a collar on? She had never noticed it before, which is why she assumed the dog was homeless. The dog's hair must have grown over it, but where was the dog's owner? It all started when Daisy and a few other neighbors noticed a stray dog wandering in the park. It was a large male Labrador. Its size made it impossible to ignore. His hair was long and shaggy, so it looked like he did not have any owner. Daisy and her neighbors have been bringing the stray dog food, and it always seemed so grateful for the help. Daisy was wondering if the dog had an owner. It looked like it had not been a stray for long, but no one in their neighborhood recognized the animal. The dog wandered around the park and barely left, especially now that people from the neighborhood started bringing him food and water. But nobody got to get close enough to the dog to see if it had a collar. Daisy wondered if the dog had run away from an abusive owner. Unlike other dogs who were friendly and happy to play with people, this dog was different. The dog seemed to prefer keeping its distance from anyone who tried to get closer to it. It seemed like the dog would not trust any of them. His tail was always hanging down, and he never lets anyone get too close. He would not start eating or drinking unless everyone had backed far away in a distance where he felt safe. Since nobody could get close to the dog, they did not know what to do with him. On the 3rd day, Daisy decided to call Animal Services. Animal Services told her they do not have the resources to track the owner of a lost pet. But Animal Services said they could catch the dog if he is becoming a bother. Daisy asked them how they handled stray dogs. Animal Services told Daisy that once they catch the stray, they will bring it to a shelter. If the dog wasn't adopted within 5 days, the shelter would have to put the dog down. Daisy was shocked. 5 days was such a short period. So when Animal Services asked her for the location of the stray dog, she did not bother to answer and just hung up. As the days passed by, the neighbors lost interest in the stray dog, hanging out at the park. Daisy kept feeding the dog and checking on him on her way home from work. In fact, she looked forward to seeing him every day because the dog seemed to be getting used to her. She was looking forward to the day he would be comfortable enough to get close to her. There was no way Daisy could let Animal Services catch this dog. She would have to find another solution on her own. Daisy had never wanted a pet before, but this time, she was considering adopting the dog herself. She asked John about it, and he said they could take in the stray. In fact, they were both excited about it. They have never had a pet before, but there was a problem. They had to catch it first. So, Daisy and John went to a pet store to buy some toys, wet food, and treats that could interest the dog. They immediately went to the park and found the dog by the picnic tables. The stray dog seemed to be happy to see Daisy. She was now a familiar, friendly face, and when he saw what she brought with her, he willingly came to her. Daisy was speechless. Maybe catching the dog would be easier than she thought. As the stray dog moved closer to her, Daisy felt excited. It was a sign that he trusted her. She was excited to give the dog a better home. It took all her might to remain calm so that the dog won't suspect that he was being caught. Before, Daisy would back away to give the dog some room to enjoy his meal when she fed him. But this time, Daisy put the food down and stayed put. Meanwhile, John was on the side, keeping his distance since he was not a familiar face yet to the stray. When the dog noticed that Daisy sat by the food, he hesitated. The dog stopped moving closer and started to bark at her as if telling her to move. He began to pace from a distance as he waited for Daisy to move away. He did not seem happy. Daisy calmly called out to him in a soft and friendly voice. Finally, the dog moved closer. It looked like he was too hungry to resist the wet food. Daisy stayed still as he ate his food. When the dog was done eating, Daisy noticed that he did not rush away from her. She took this as a good sign. Daisy slowly reached out her hand and ran her fingers over his fur. This was when she felt something over his neck. The dog had been wearing a collar all this time. Nobody noticed it because of his thick and long fur. Daisy rotated the collar to see if it had a tag. She found a rectangular tag on the other side, but it looked too large. She tried to get a closer look, expecting to see information about the owner, like an address or a phone number, but she found something else. The tag had something that looked like a username and a password, but there was no website or any indication of what it could be for. Could it be something for a pet tracking service? Then Daisy noticed that there was more. It looked like a string of numbers. Confused, Daisy held the dog and asked John to come closer and take a look at the collar. He said that it looked like coordinates. Was it the location of the dog's home? But why would it come with a username and password? To be sure, John looked up the coordinates online, and an address was pulled up. The dog seemed to be comfortable around Daisy by then. Daisy and John decided to take the dog with them to check out the address. They lured the dog inside their car and set out towards the address. On the drive there, Daisy and John were quiet. Daisy had invested a lot of feelings in him for the past few days. At the same time, if the dog belonged to someone else, it was just right that they return it to its owner. The dog seemed to be used to riding in a car. He was comfortable and seemed to enjoy the ride, sticking his head out the window as most dogs do. As they moved further toward the address, they noticed that the dog was starting to look excited. It looks like he recognizes the area. Daisy noticed that the neighborhood had changed. They were on the industrial side of town with no trees around, and the residential area seemed to look worse as they went further. There were a lot of abandoned houses. Daisy was starting to have a bad feeling about it. As they got closer to the address, Daisy and John noticed that the dog could not handle his excitement. He started wagging his tail uncontrollably. John stopped the car, and the dog started barking excitedly at a worn-down house. This must be his home. John parked his car in front of the house, but none of them had made a move yet. The rundown neighborhood was potentially unsafe. John told Daisy that he thought she should stay in the car with the dog first while he tried to talk to the owner. So, John stepped out of the car and casually walked up to the house. He knocked on the door. He tried looking for a doorbell, but could not find any. John walked away from the door and tried to peek through the windows at the side of the house. The excited dog suddenly jumped out of the open window and ran towards the house. They saw him jump in through a broken window. Daisy was in a state of shock. She still was processing how the dog suddenly left her lap. She stepped out of the car and joined John by the door. He told her that nobody seemed to be home. The house looked abandoned for some time now. Then, they heard the dog barking upstairs. Daisy told her husband that they had to retrieve the dog. The couple went to the back of the house and found it open. Once inside, they confirmed that there was no way anyone was living there, and the place was in bad shape. They quickly went up the stairs when they heard the dog barking again. To their surprise, the dog was not alone. An old homeless man was lying down on a mattress and was busy petting a dog. He seemed to be weak and in no state to move. When he noticed John and Daisy, he greeted them with a smile. After introducing themselves, the old man told them his story. The dog was named Jacko and belonged to the original owner of the house. The old man was homeless for decades, but one rainy night, he was forced to take shelter in the abandoned house. He saw the abandoned dog there, and they formed a bond ever since. The old man said that Jacko's collar was already there, put by his previous owners. He just let it stay there and had no idea that they were coordinates to the house. In fact, he admitted he left the dog in the park on purpose last week. For the past months, the old homeless man felt that his health was going downhill, and he was worried about Jacko ending up alone again if he passed away. So, he asked a friend if he could take Jacko to a park in town and leave him there. He was hoping that somebody would like Jacko and take him home. The old man told Daisy and John that he appreciated that they made an effort to return Jacko home, but as he pointed out, he was in no condition to take care of Jacko any longer. He told the couple it was his last wish that they adopt Jacko and take good care of him. Daisy offered to take the old man to a hospital, but he refused. He said he had already lived a long life and was done with it. He assured him that his friend would come over every morning to see if he was doing okay. So, they did not have to worry. They were not leaving him there to die. He would not even tell them his name, so that they do not have to worry about him. Daisy could not help but get teary-eyed. She held his hands and assured him that they would gladly grant his last wish and adopt Jacko. She promised that she would take good care of him and provide him with a good home.